London, and we went out to meet some friends to break the fast, and my phone went off. So I immediately took my date, Allahumma sumta leka wa ara, help me, Allahumma leka sumta wa ara rizqiba aftartu, yeah. And I popped that date in my mouth, and the table next door looked at me with this horrible look of criticism and said,
Astaghfirullah.
Stuff, that's brother. And I said, well, the adhan went off, and I broke my fast. Alhamdulillah. Allahu Akbar. And I just wasn't going to be affected by their negativity. My intention was pure, and Allah loves me, and I didn't feel Allah spanking my little behind because I had popped my date when I heard the adhan, and so I just thought everything's hunky-dory. Right.
You should have done like this.
Well, I was on my best behavior in London. I didn't want the bobbies to arrest me. So. There are no, for those of you, just to make sure that you're refreshed on this, particularly for the new Muslims, to remind you, there are no supererogatory prayers, there's no sunnah muakkada, there's no nafils. When you go to the prayer for Eid, mashallah. There's not one offered before the Eid prayer or after the Eid prayer. Now, let's say that it was that one time when the Prophet prayed in the masjid, you would pray the tahiyyat al-masjid, the salute to the masjid of 2 rakat. But you do not pray that unless you have that exception to the rule. Does everybody understand that? You do not pray that at a masala, because it's not a masjid. It's just a place declared for us to pray Eid.
That's a masjid and a masala.
Yeah, what if for us
No, you're not in the masjid. You have to be in the masjid to do
We
that.
are in the masjid.
The women
If
are.
women are in the masjid,
Yes.
then you should do it. That's a great question. You know what? What would I do without you? 30 years I've been married to this woman. She's still keeping me straight. You're right. Absolutely. You women have to do it, but we men don't.
But if you are home, do you still pray Fajr prayer
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yes.
before Eid prayer?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Because that's a
I
part.
wanted to make it clear, because that's the way I do.
Thank you. So let's see. Ibn Abbas reported that the Prophet ﷺ used to come out on the day of Eid and pray 2 rakats with nothing before or after them. This is the case if the prayer is offered in an open area. If, however, the people pray the Eid prayer in the masjid, they should pray 2 rakats for tahiyyat al-masjid. So there's also no adhan and no iqamah, and some people are very surprised about that. That there's no adhan and no iqamah. Takbir on the day of Eid, this is one of the greatest sunnahs of this day. Al-Duraqutni and others reported that when Ibn Umar came out on Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, he would strive hard in making takbir until he reached the prayer place. Then he would continue making takbir until the imam came. And this really is one of the highlights of my year. Every year I used to sit there and have a good cry. Can you imagine me crying?
Not at all.
And here's the verse about that. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 185. He wants that you must complete the same number of days. What days do you think he's talking about? Ramadan. Okay. And that you must magnify Allah. Say Allahu Akbar. Allah is the most great for having guided you so that you may be grateful to Him. Which are some of the vision statements of the whole month of Ramadan, right? One of the visions is for us to become grateful. One of the visions is to get close to God. So that's the one that all scholars agree with, the one that I sang while ago.
Do it again.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, walillahil hamd. Now, you may hear this, but the most authentic is that one. Allahu Akbar kabira, walhamdulillahi kathira, wa subhanallahi bukratan wa adila. La ilaha illallah wahda, and it goes on and on. I have it here in the presentation, and you can see it. Next year, I'm going to give you the interpretation of each sentence. Inshallah, developing to that point. I ran out of time yesterday. So, I want to share with you, because there is an argument among the scholars that dhikr is not supposed to be made in unison. But I got to tell you, I don't understand that, so I'm going to say Allahu Alam here. I'm going to plead on that because we're supposed to make it to ourselves. But has anybody here ever tried to do it when somebody else was doing it on a different key next to you and somebody on the other side was doing it? It gets quite chaotic. So what you will see here is we'll all be doing it together.
That's when you pray together and you get more blessings for praying together. I wouldn't know why you wouldn't.
Because dhikr is not obligatory in that regard.
But it's beautiful. Do it.
It is beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard in my life. So the takbir, this is some history for you, which was done in Al-Masjid al-Haram on the day of Eid, was where one person or a number of people would sit on the roof of Zamzam and say the takbir, and the people would repeat after them in the masjid. Then Sheikh Abdul al-Aziz ibn Baz denounced this way and said that it was an innovation. What the Sheikh meant was that it was a partial innovation when done in this particular manner. So that's just some history of that and how it has changed. But anybody can Google it and you'll see that there's this scholarly argument about making dhikr in unison. There's a scholarly argument about not doing the other one, but just the most authentic is the one I recited to you. So just so you know these things, if somebody says that, I don't want you to get in an argument, just say, yeah, my teacher taught me that there's those opinions out there. Alhamdulillah. It's a big deal. And here it is, the one that I chanted for you. And of course, you all know what it means. Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest. Allah is the greatest, there is no God but God. Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest, and He is deserving of praise. Allah is deserving of praise. This is the one I was chanting. Oops, sorry, I didn't show it to you. There, it's quite long, but you may hear that one. And that's the rest of it right there. Okay? So, congratulating one another. I want you to know that Eid Mubarak and Eid Kareem is not from the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. Imagine that. Do you think you'll go to hell if you do it? No. I did not say it's haram, did I? I'm not a haram police. We don't do that in ISLAM. But I want you to know what the great predecessors did and what the most appropriate thing to do is according to the Sunnah. So, people may exchange congratulations and good greetings on Eid, no matter what form the words take. For example, they may say to one another, Taqabbalallahu minna wa minkum. May Allah accept from us and from you our good deeds. Jubair ibn Nufrayr said, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when people met one another on the day of Eid, that's what they would say. Taqabbalahu minna wa minkum. You want to practice it? Taqabbalahu minna wa minkum. Very good. MashaAllah. That's reported by Ibn Hajar. So that is the Sunnah, if you want to practice the Sunnah. Eid Mubarak is not from the Sunnah. Eid Kareem is not from the Sunnah. Alright? It's just what people do.
Just hang on.
Okay? I'll hang on. Let me know when you want me to. Because there's only one more slide and then we're going to get to do a little tafsir today, inshallah.
Do a little sharing about the
Do you want to do some sharing about the month of Ramadan? I'll do that just for my wife. Maybe I'll get some brownie points. So we only have one more slide of the etiquettes of Ramadan, and that the Rasulullah ﷺ used to change his route. Now you won't have a hard time doing that because you're going to come here from your home, presumably tomorrow, and then you're going to go to Deborah's. So when you go from Deborah's back home, you're going to go a different route. But the reason that the scholars say that Rasulullah ﷺ used to do that was so he could get more rewards. So on the way one direction, he would get to say to Kabbalah,
couple of laws about the dog.
Very good, I just wanted to see if you knew it. To a lot of people, and then when he went the other direction, he'd get to say it to a whole bunch of other people. So there were more blessings in it. So that is the lesson of the Eid, the etiquettes of Eid. And Mason is going to toggle over here so we can get right into the tafsir that I want to get into.
Okay.
I am going to, well, that didn't work well, I wanted it to. Give you an opportunity, when we began the month of Ramadan, we all made personal goals. I asked you to write them down. So I want to take a few moments while I'm trying to get to slide number 627 of this class. Would anybody like to share about achieving your goals in the month of Ramadan, or any special thing that happened? Yes.
The biggest thing that, my biggest goal was just to work on my patience, really, because I've been tried a lot with my new job, and I enjoy it. So I've just been practicing my patience more and more, and then just so happened to have met a lot more patients that require, a little bit more attention, and me to be a little bit more patient. I'm starting a job tomorrow as a live-in, 5 days a week, so I'm not going to be getting a break from my patients. It's just going to be the same person 24 hours a day for 5 days a week. So, inshallah, I'll bring my patients with me.
Congratulations. Alhamdulillah. Would anybody else like to share? Yes, miss.
What I wanted to memorize a surah, and one of them was Surah Al-Hamazah, and I managed to do that. It was hard because it was 9 ayahs, and that was and Rishne downloaded the app on my phone, which really helped me. So for I think I read it like maybe 200 times just to memorize it over and over again. I did that, and I had also the goal of patience. And I felt like this month I really took the time to reflect on the things that I felt like were not so great that were happening to me during the month, that I just wanted to focus on counting my blessings, and that really shifted my thinking.
Very good. Congratulations. Yes, sister.
I also worked on my patience, and I feel like I achieved more success this year than I have in the prior years by the grace of Allah. I also really enjoyed the environment at the masjid that I go to with my daughter, and I was very, very touched by the way that the girls over there embraced her. And on the 27th night, we had to go for that. We went somewhere for dinner, and I raced across 408 to get there. And it was packed, but they just sat wider, and they kept 2 spots for us. And things like that really touched my heart. And one other thing that I learned in Ramadan, I don't know if you guys know Omar Suleiman. He does a lot of stuff on the internet. He's a young Palestinian, American-born and brought up, but of Palestinian origin. And I think a lot of the youth relate to him because they have a similar background. He said that spend half an hour every day asking Allah continuously for forgiveness for some habit that you have that you want to get rid of. And it sort of serves the purpose of A, Allah will help you to move on, and B, it makes you focus that I really need to get rid of this.
Yeah.
And he said just keep focusing on it and do it for half an hour a day. If you can't do it for half an hour, I guess 10 minutes is good enough too.
Well, half an hour is good because you can sit down and watch a TV show for a half an hour. So if
Yeah.
if one of your habits is you watch too much TV, or you're watching not the best things,
Yeah.
to have 30 minutes to ask for forgiveness and to
Yeah.
focus more on something that you don't want to do,
Yeah.
it should be reasonable.
I thought it was very nice, and I think we can continue it for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And that's the idea, is to continue what you start. Don't let it die. It's easy to do that. Who else would like to share?
Bueller? Anybody?
Okay. I just want to say how happy I am to have my 2 oldest daughters with me today. Mashallah. Their parents, I think they're tiny. But yeah, it just means so much for you guys to be with me.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
Don't let me get started.
Don't even go there.
Okay, so I want to go back, unless anybody else wants to share. I do hope you reached your goals that you wrote down, and I hope you will continue to nurture those goals. But I wanted to go back to Surah Al-Baqarah and pick up on the tafsir just a little bit today in the second chapter of the Holy Quran, and we'll begin today at verse 75. Can you faithful believers covet, hope, that they will believe in your religion, and in spite of the fact that a party of them, Jewish rabbis, used to hear the word of Allah, the Torah, and then they used to pervert, change it knowingly after they understood it. And when they, Jews, those Israelites, met those who believe, the Muslims, they say, we believe as you believe. But when they met with one another in private, they say, shall you Jews tell them, Muslims, what Allah has revealed to you? And they, the Muslims, may argue with you, Jews, about it before your Lord. Have you Jews then no understanding? Know they, these particular Israelites, not that Allah knows what they conceal and what they reveal. So let's look into the meaning of that in today's context, and of course the tafsir in the context of the time when it was revealed. Now, what I wanted to tell you is that a lot of people will say, I've had them say it in my class, oh, where does it say, where did the Jews pervert the Bible? Or where did they pervert the Torah? And it actually says in Jeremiah 23 and verse 6, you have perverted the words of the living God. Now, if you were to go in certain King Jameses, you would not see it just as it's written there. If you go to the Strong's Concordance, you will see it that way. If you go to Adams Clark's commentary on the Bible, you will see it that way. If you simply type in Jeremiah 23:6, Google it, you will see it that way, and you will see a whole article. As a matter of fact, I'm sorry, 621,000 articles on that. So just to let you know that even the Bible says they changed it. It's a truth believed by the Christians who follow the Bible as well as the Muslims that it was changed. The Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints uses this verse to talk about false prophets who will teach lies and be cursed. So I just want you to know that there is actually a verse. I always try to bring verses I know from the Bible to you about a specific subject matter.
They are liars.
The Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, they're called LDSs, yes. They teach that, absolutely.
Jewish are very liar people, very liar.
Yes.
They lie all the time. I see in the
We are
But
we
remember,
are ones to judge.
remember, we don't want to make a blanket statement. This is in the context of those Israelites at the time. So we don't want to do any sort of statement that sounds like a hate statement, because, you know, if I want to always say things here that if my Jewish brother was here, he would want to come back. And I think if we said that, he might not want to come back. So, but in terms of the context of this particular verse, it sort of demonstrates how there was little hope that the Jews of that time would believe. So, when Allah said in verse 75, now let me stop a minute before I go on here. You got to realize that the Muslims at that time were doing a lot of dawah. They were really taking great pains to try to get the Jews of that time to accept Islam. And the Quran sort of describes in many places or with many stories, the Jews questioning nature and perversity, you know, about the cow, and you know, how what color should it be, and how old should it be, and should it be a male, and should it be a female, and these stories, I believe, sort of pointed out to the Muslims that they cannot expect such a kind of people to believe, a people that even question God. And then, you know, the 70 were taken up to Mount Tur, and they actually heard from God. And so that helps you sort of understand this verse. Is everybody with me? You remember that story with the tafsir? Okay. Just want to make sure I'm not getting away. So, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was encouraging, I think you'll hear it in this verse, I think He was encouraging them to say, don't worry too much about them. If they're committing such a heinous crime as to, distort the Word of God knowingly, and they actually know the gravity of the sin of that deed of changing the Torah. So the Quran wants the Muslims to realize that men who are enslaved to their desires, their egos, it's a big problem. So that's the sort of lesson that we can take from this day. One of the biggest things that I see is that I have over the years watched imams gain popularity. And when they get a certain amount of popularity, it sometimes goes to their head. And they get an ego problem. And so I think there's a lot of that meaning in this particular verse. We have to be very careful because our desires can lead us to do shameless things. If we're greedy and our desires wants to have money, perhaps we might say something that people want us to hear instead of what God wants us to say. We might be swayed. And I always think about this in the sort of context of addicts. They'll tell you anything that you want to hear to get what they want. And so sometimes when we get a disease in our heart of pride and arrogance, we will tell people whatever they want to hear in order to gain popularity with them. So, do not covet, faithful believers, that they will believe in your religion, meaning that these people would obey you. They are the devout sect of Jews, whose fathers witnessed the clear signs. But they are the deviant sect, thank you very much, of Jews whose fathers witnessed the clear signs, but their hearts became hard afterwards. And this goes back again to verse 74, which I continued to do tafsir on at the halakha before last, and I did loads of tafsir on it for actually 2 weeks. I think I talked about verse 74. When your heart gets hard, you will not cry. You will no longer be able to express your feelings. And the healing of all human beings is in the feeling. It's not in intellectualizing. One of the biggest problems we have as therapists is when people come to our office and they're in a lot of pain, but they want to intellectualize everything. They want to come from up here, and I tell them, okay, buddy, let's drop down about 18 inches to right here, and then we can do something. Because this is where it all happens. So, in spite of the fact that a party of them, these Jewish rabbis, used to hear the word of Allah, the Torah, then they used to change it, meaning they would distort its meaning after they understood it. And I want to talk about this because a lot of people want understanding. And I always say as a therapist that understanding is the booby prize. Now what do I mean by that? If something horrible happened to me in life, and I can understand why it happened, would that address my feelings?
No.
No, it'll address me mentally. But would it move my heart?
No.
Talk to me, folks.
No.
Okay.
It might.
So,
It can it? Not.
has it ever in your life?
That would take too much
You
time.
understand why someone, like say someone not taking.
In other words, if somebody molests me, and I can understand why they molested me, would that heal me?
No.
No.
Just because you understand doesn't mean it's going to change.
Exactly. So understanding is not faith. What I'm trying to point out here is that this verse really helps us to see that these Jewish rabbis, they understood, but did they believe?
No.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that understand a lot of things, but do they believe?
No.
Is faith the driving force in their life?
No.
And we have people that are so intellectual, they have a hard time with faith. Because they're in their mind instead of their heart. Am I making more sense now?
Yes.
So, just to make my point here, I put here, understand but defy. And the things of Allah defy explanation. And I wrote down some examples here, but we belong to a remarkably quirky species. Despite our best effort, some of our strangest foibles still defy explanation. And let's talk about some of those things. Darwin struggled to explain why we would evolve a response that lets others know that we have cheated or lied. So what do people do when they cheat or lie?
Your body language changes.
Yeah? Can anybody be more specific?
They
Stop perspiring.
They start perspiring,
They might look a little flushed, they're blinking a
they
lot.
blink their eyes, and they blush. They turn red usually. In their neck and their face. That's not from experience, right?
Because you see,
So, now,
the face expression tell you that this person not telling you the truth.
so I'm just using this to point out how the fact that there's some things in life we don't understand and they don't have anything to do with faith. Nobody in this room can tell me why we blush. You might can give me a Dr. Sadia might can give me a physiological report about what happens in the body, but would that really explain it?
No.
No. Okay. So let's just look at a few other things. Can anybody here tell me why we laugh? Besides something's funny. No. So something's funny. Why do we laugh?
Just thinking about the past things,
But why?
which were humorous,
But why?
to make yourself happy. If
But
you
why?
remember my
I laugh about why something's
But the
funny.
reason is we really don't understand this thing. There's a lot of things we don't understand, which is very humbling. Isn't it?
Yes.
Because we think we know it all, particularly certain different ages that we might go through. We think we know all. Teenagers are very hard to understand, aren't they? We love them to death, but they're very hard to understand. And what's amazing about that, I want to point something out because I'm really trying to make this real for you. If we watch apes, and I'm not saying we come from apes, please don't walk out of here and misunderstand me. But if we watch animals, they do not go through teenagers things like we as humans. Can anybody explain that? Does anybody understand that? No. Dreams. We have a whole lot of conjecture. Freud had all this stuff about dreams, but nobody understands it. What's the theory?
I don't want to throw people off, so I won't share it.
Okay, I want to know
It's
after
rather
that.
dense.
Okay. Nobody understands altruism. We'll say, oh, that's wonderful. But why? Why is one person altruistic and another person wouldn't give you, salt on a piece of bread? What about art? Do we really understand art? Every single one of us will look at a piece of art and every single one of us will interpret it differently. And we really don't understand it. And then sometimes when we ask the artist, say, I don't know what was going on when I did that. I've asked artists, well, what were you feeling? Because I wanted to understand. I don't know what I was feeling. I don't remember. I worked on it for months. I like art. So. Kissing. Does anybody understand why we kiss? Or why we want to kiss? Just something to think about.
I'm gonna get these out of it.
I don't want to, but here. Nose picking. I'm just really driving it home. How many people have been on I-4 and seen somebody pick their nose?
There's something in it.
Yeah. But why do we do it? Some people pick and there's nothing there. They look like they're looking for diamonds up in there, but why do we do it? We don't understand why we do what we do.
It's
So,
irritating. understand.
Now, this is also a biblical principle. In 1 Corinthians 2 and verse 34, but the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them because they are spiritually discerned. So the things of the Spirit, the things that are about Allah and understanding our hearts and these things, these spiritual disease, you can only discern them spiritually if you're connected with Allah. It requires faith. It doesn't require having 120 IQ. Some of the most faithful people I've ever known were considered mentally challenged. But they had a whole lot of faith. A lot of faith. So let's go back to verse 75. I thought that was a little entertaining. It was for me when I was processing. Maybe this refers to the 70 men that had heard directly on Mount Tur, Mount Sinai. Oh, you want me to go up next slide? Okay.
Where is my cane?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's over there on that green
Oh,
chair.
I get what
Where am I? Oh, here we go.
One more, Bruce. One more. There you go, baby.
Oh, there we go. So in this case, they understood well, yet they used to defy the truth knowingly after they understood it. So if I understand the truth, but I defy it, is it a benefit to me?
No.
It's actually a curse to me, because on the day of judgment, what I know, I'm responsible for. So what's more important, for me to have a whole lot of understanding, or for me to have a lot of practice? For me to have a lot of practice. They were fully aware of their erroneous interpretations and corruption. They knew that certain people came to them with certain superstitions, and they would ask them questions, and they would answer their questions for a bribe. This is a historically known fact. Surah 5:13 talks about this more. So because of their violation of their covenant, we cursed them and made their hearts grow hard. So there's a lesson in this for us today, folks. If you do not obey what you know, you can guarantee that your heart will grow hard. And it happens. People say, well, I know I ought to pray, but... And the longer they say, I know I ought to pray and put their butt in it, guess what? The harder their heart gets. And the more easy it becomes not to pray. I know I shouldn't gossip about people, but it's the truth. Well, guess what? It's still gossip. That's what Rasulullah said. I know I shouldn't look at this or look at that, but makes our heart grow harder and harder and harder. And it makes us dislike ourselves more and more and more. Why do we have self-esteem problems?
We're not listening to our...
Because we're not listening to the fitra that Allah said that we have a self-reproaching soul. Allah is always speaking to us. When an atheist takes a hammer and hits his hand with a hammer, he says, God, help me. Maybe something else. He might even curse God, but who does he remember? God. Ask police. See people on the road that have had accidents. They will tell you they don't have any faith, but they talk about God a lot. You hear God being slung around a whole lot. Qatada commented that Allah's statement, then they used to change it knowingly after they understood it in verse 75. They are the Jews who used to hear Allah's words and then alter them after they understood and comprehended them. They would alter them according to whatever benefited them the most. Mujahid said, those who used to alter it and conceal its truths, they were the scholars. Ibn Wahab said that Ibn Zayd commented, used to hear the word of Allah, the Torah, then they used to change it in verse 75. They altered the Torah that Allah revealed to them, making it say that the lawful is unlawful and the prohibited is allowed, and that what is right is false and what is false is right. So when a person seeking the truth comes to them with a bribe, they judge his case by the book of Allah. But when a person comes to them seeking to do evil with the bribe, they take out the other distorted book in which it is stated that he is in the right. When someone comes to them who is not seeking what is right, nor offering them a bribe, then they enjoin righteousness on them. Folks, I think there's such a powerful lesson in this, because is this not what we're seeing today? We see imams, I hate to say this, enjoining people, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then the next thing I'm hearing about them beating their wives, which is not allowed Islamically. We treat women on an equal footing that we live on. It says clearly in the Quran, you can't even use harsh words with your wife. No harsh words.
Wow. Yeah.
Why are you laughing? You're not even married.
Because I can't imagine someone that, I mean, being with someone for so long and,
Not calling him a four-letter word?
well, I mean, not that. Gosh, I would hope that, you know, you
We
wouldn't
just
marry
see so
someone
many people use so many harsh words.
on everyone
But
that
let me
we
tell you
know.
that it is available. It's out there. And I mean, I'm going to share this story because I'm sharing it for the sake of Allah. We did not like to let our children spend the night away from home. We did not want them to be exposed to stuff that was going on out there. And when they became teenagers, they had a whole lot of understanding that we didn't have. And therefore, they manipulated to finally they stayed away from home some. And one time, one of my daughters, and I don't know if she'd be comfortable with me saying